There we go. I'm here. Just double checking. Ah, that's what I was looking for right there. Hey guys, how you doing? It's Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer. And yeah, this is one of the major things I'm doing right now. Just making sure that everything is straight. And ooh, haha, hello, everyone. Now, I'm just gonna do one quick thing, real quick. Had a few tech difficulties, and that's fine. So what I'm going to be doing here, you guys out there, hello, Miss Maltese. What I'm going to be doing real quick is I'm going to go back since I got the groovy music. And welcome to How We Roll. That's right. This is the show where I share my experiences about being a gamer and what it took for me to get there. Now, today's episode is really, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna have a little bit of the feels on this one. I really am, because this is the show that I share my personal experiences and how I came to be where I am and why we do the stuff that we do here at Back in the Deck and everything else. Like I said, I'm Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer, and I'm saying, hey, what's going on? Thank everyone for showing up, because this is a really big endeavor for me. I will say that. What I'm doing here is I'm just working on, okay, good. And I can answer stuff in the comments and all that jazz. So, there we go. All right. So yeah, this is episode 2 of the reboot of How We Roll. Last Tuesday, we sat down and we talked a little bit about my very first experience as a gamer, what it took for me to get to where I was, literally the difficulty that I had in getting to the first gaming store that I ever got to. So that was a very, very specific set of complications. And, if you guys are interested, we have, there we go. All right, there we go. Yeah, we just had to do some other stuff. Now, if you guys didn't see last week's episode, that's perfectly fine. You guys can totally check it out on the Back in the Deck YouTube channel at any time. Like, yeah, there we go. Hey, look at that. And just to sum up, last time I started to tell you guys the story of my first quest to become a role player. So this took 4 hours across town over the course of 5 buses, getting to a city that was hostile to people of color. And all of this happened, and I believe it was 1989, somewhere between 87 and 89. I was a pre-teenager, and when I finally got to the gaming store, after pretty much the whole day on the bus, I was experiencing the things that people of my tan tend to have to go through when they go through a new neighborhood. So we've got people crossing the street to walk to the other side, sideways glances, people pulling their kids toward them and pulling their kids toward them, clutching their purses, just all of that jazz that made everything seem so amazing. And by amazing, I mean, so there was a little bit of a sense of I didn't belong, wherever I was. And people go through this all the time. It doesn't matter if in gaming or comics or any sort of geekdom you are a woman or you happen to be disabled of some kind. People with handicaps, they go through that stuff. And this episode, we're going to be tackling toxicity in environments. Okay. So, when I walked into that dimly lit store, I marveled at the amount of books that were on the shelves. It was like walking into a library, Again, all the places that I tried to find Dungeons and Dragons or some kind of role-playing game after seeing the kids at school in my magnet program having, going over their notes and stuff at nutrition, I couldn't find them at Kmart. I couldn't find them at any of the Korean owned swap meets that were by my house. So I made it all the way out to Burbank, and I was just marveled at this store. I think last episode I said that it reminded me of Ollivanders from the Neverending Story. Very dimly lit, very deeply packed with books. And I noticed some guys in the back of the store playing with tanks and these elaborately painted armies. I mean, just stupidly elaborate. I'm not going to say I was shocked, but I was really, really interested in what they were doing. So there I was, plump little me, waddling up after being on the bus all day to watch these kids or to watch these guys. They look like teenagers, kind of the older kids South Park thing, you know, um, with their toy robots and their tanks and all that stuff. And I asked them what they were doing, and they told me that they were playing 40K. And I'm like, 40K? I've never heard of that. I'm new to this whole thing. And it was a fascinating study in otherness. That is what I can say when it comes to that. Primarily, again, I where I grew up, we had like the Santee Alley. We had Korean owned swap meets that were notorious for having second rate toys with terrible paint jobs. Like we didn't have okay, they weren't out at the time, but we didn't have the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. We had the super special space guys, So when I saw these guys playing with these armies that are just like, what is that? What is this? What is all that? And I saw a dude painting in the back, and again, with all of this stuff going down, I'm like, dude, this is awesome. And I'm looking at these people painting them by hand. And I was blown away because this was not done in the place that I live. Now, for those of you guys that know, I'm from South Central Los Angeles. Rest in peace, John Singleton. But pretty much look up any movie in his early or late career, and you'll see my neighborhood. As a matter of fact, in Boys in the Hood, you might just see my house. Um, and so I was like looking at these guys for like 3 minutes. I didn't want to interrupt anybody. And, I saw like one guy would be measuring the board with a tape measure, and then he'd move his tanks and his little action figures across it, and then he'd roll a handful of dice, and then the other dude would take a bunch of figures off the table. And I'm like, what? Oh, okay. So, after that guy was done, I looked over and I saw that it was going back and forth, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys, what are you guys doing? Like, what is this? And one of the dudes looked over at me, and essentially the look on his face was just, it was, I can't say quite exasperated, but I think it was very, very irritated. And he's like, duh, I'm playing 40K. Like I was supposed to know what it was that he was talking about at 12 years old. And I'm like, it was the 80s. So there was no internet back then. It was the late 80s, early 90s. There was no internet. There was the phone book. There was the encyclopedia. I had the World Book Encyclopedia, not the Britannica. So I asked what 40K was, and this dude and everybody else at the table just laughed at me. So I dealt with being laughed at in the same way that I did at school all those years. I flipped the table and I kicked him around. No, 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 no. I didn't do that. But I just walked away. Not my store, not my city, not my environment. And I went to the guy at the counter, and I asked if he sold Dungeons and Dragons. And the guy, without, I'm not gonna say without missing a beat, but I will say without standing up. Okay, without standing up from his seat, he gave me a look. It was I can't quite describe the look. It was sort of exasperation, irritation. Later on, Futurama would write the character known as Kiff, And that made things easy for this description because it very much was a ugh. And he pointed me to a shelf. He didn't stand up. He didn't walk me over there. He didn't say anything. The look he gave me was like, I don't know you. You don't belong here. You know, go away, fat kid. And he pointed me just to the shelf, and it had a bunch of D&D stuff, just a bunch of D&D stuff. And I didn't know where to start. I really didn't. So I tried getting his attention again, and with an exasperated huff, this dude gets up, walks over, and nonchalantly just pulls the player's handbook off of the shelf and hands it to me. And he's like, "Player's handbook." And I'm like, "This is the game?" Confused because I had come from, this was my first experience getting into role play. The only games I knew at the time were like Sorry and Monopoly and the standard Milton Bradley and Hasbro board games. And I was just confused at the lack of dice or the lack of box. It was just a book. And the price tag was like $14.99. It was like $15, and that wasn't a king's ransom. Okay, $15 wasn't that much money. I mean, it was more money than it is today, but it wasn't like $100 or something like that. At least not to any grown-ups. Okay, but to a 12-year-old in '89, understand in California, in 1989, minimum wage was $4 and a quarter. That was it. So a $15 book, $15 book, that was like 3.5 hours of labor. Okay. Anybody with a minimum wage job would have to work half the day just to get this book. And I just sank. I mean, one, because the legal working age was 16 years old. And I was decidedly not, actually. I was 12. And so I told the guy that I'd have to come back another day, maybe with my mom, and the dude just snatched it out of my hand. Like, didn't say, "Okay, I understand." Didn't say, literally snatched it out of my hand, like at the time I was going to run out with it. And he put it back on the shelf, and I asked about the games in the back, asked about this 40K thing. And the guy was like, "If you can't afford a D&D book, you can't afford 40K. Maybe you should leave." And I left the store, and I just felt dejected. I felt seriously dejected because, there I was, and I was just asking questions. I was a kid asking questions, wanting to play this game, wanting to play this stuff. And I left the store, and I went back to the bus stop, and I just sat down, and I started crying because I'd never felt so unwanted. Not true, not true. I felt unwanted. I felt as unwanted at the time as I did when I was a little kid and I was terrible at sports. And just to make sure that I could play with the other kids, the teachers would make me the team captain of the teams, like for kickball or any of the sports that we're playing. And the kids said out loud that if I picked them, they would throw the game. They just didn't want me around, and that's what I felt like. That's what I felt like when I left the store. But it was still worse than that because at least the kids at the school knew me. They knew I wasn't good at sports. They knew my name. They knew I was good at math. They knew I was a good student. Like, they knew more about me and didn't let me into their reindeer games because I sucked at them, but didn't just outright dismiss me, And so 5 hours later, when I finally got home, my mom was already asleep, because she worked graveyard, so she spent most of the day asleep. So I went to my room, and that the weight of not being welcomed or wanted, not just at that store, okay, but in that entire area, not wanted on the street. I was getting strange looks on the bus, and just the way that I was treated at that store just weighed on me, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way to do this. I just want to play these games, and I see kids having fun. I just want to have fun with these kids, but I couldn't get the question out of my head, like, why were these guys so mean? Why? I mean, they didn't look like football players or basketball players, They definitely didn't look like movie stars. These guys they looked just like me. You know, they were overweight, they were awkward, you know, um, and none of them looked like they had significant others. Matter of fact, the only difference between me and them that I could see from the outside was my skin color, you know, and and I knew that that was going to be a problem going to the valley, because when you grew up where I grew up, it was like, no, don't go over there. The white people are going to, no, 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 no. And, but I figured that just going to a store like that, a store where upon walking in, you have something in common with everyone else there, would take the edge off that. I figured these guys played this game. I really wanted to play this game. We probably read all the same books and watched all the same cartoons, so there we go. And it occurred to me that that alone wasn't going to be enough for me to be welcomed into what seemed to be the totality of that environment. And I just cried myself to sleep that night, having wasted a whole day and been dejected so poorly. So that was, that's the personal part. Now, I'm bringing all this stuff up today to talk about the toxic environments and gatekeeping in nerd culture. Okay, that was one of many, 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 many experiences I've had over the years. And I could tell a lot of other stories about the gates I've had to climb in order to get in to nerddom, and you know, and well, I promise I will in the future, but I wanted to I wanted to go about I wanted to continue the story from last week and to point out there were quite a few gates there. Okay, quite a few toxic gates that had to be crossed in order to enter the gaming community. This was back in '89. So let's take a quick look at them now. And again, these are gates that a lot of people have to face. Okay, even to this day, in 2019, a lot of people have to face these things. It's sad, but it's a thing. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, or if you're disabled, or if you have intersectionalities like disabilities, or sexual orientations, or gender identity. I mean, if you're non-binary and you walk into a game store or a gaming convention, what are you supposed to expect? Same thing with comics and all that. So what I wanted to talk about were the specific gates in that story that I had to cross. The geographic gate, which we talked about last episode. 5 buses and 4 hours. That was one way. And again, like I said, I don't want to sound like one of those old dudes like, well, back in my day, in order to play the Dungeons or the Dragons, we're going to forget about both. I had to walk uphill and I had to fight 9 clansmen, and all I had was a noodle and a stale biscuit. But you know what? That's what I did, and then we had to go and pick up a whole bunch of toilet paper and make dice out of paper mache that we used from our own spit in our toilet paper. And that was what gaming was like back in my day. No. I'm not trying to sound like that guy. But at the time, if you don't have a car and you have to go to a game store of some kind, what are you going to do? I'm fortunate to live in the greater Los Angeles area where we have buses. And some of you guys in like New York or Chicago or Japan with efficient public transportation probably wouldn't have to take 4 or 5 hours. But to the rest of the country, if you're in, say, Pittsburgh or certain parts of Philadelphia or freaking, I don't know, Boone, North Kakalaki, this is what it's like to try and get to a store. And today, we've got Amazon, we've got eBay, we've got all these mail order services that allow us to get comic books and gaming materials and DVDs. I mean, Avengers Endgame just came out, but if you hadn't seen Infinity Wars, you could see it on Amazon Prime or Netflix, or you can even go to the Red Box. I mean, there are tons of different ways to get the stuff. So that gate isn't really as big as it was. But the other gate that I had to go to was the reception of a black kid in a white neighborhood. Okay. Burbank, California is not world renowned for its diversity. We're not talking like, Liberia, y'all. And just going through, I'm part of a lot of nerd and hippie stuff now as a middle aged man. But I was once asked a question about a certain music festival in the middle of nowhere. Like, why don't we have more people of color here? And I'm like, how much time you got? Because getting places for people of color, many, many, many women, many gender non binary, many people with disabilities, it is a feat. Okay, it's easy to forget that in Los Angeles specifically because everybody got a car. Everybody, you got to, like, I know 6-year-olds that have cars. Like, granted, their parents use the cars, but the cars are in the 6-year-old's name. But yeah, I mean, there's so many, there's so much transportation. But if you don't have a car, or you have parents that work all the time, or in my case, a mom that worked the graveyard shift, so any time during regular business hours to you was 3 a.m., 4 a.m. to her. So it's not like I could get a ride, you know? And so, I mean, that's a really big thing. So going to these neighborhoods where you are not the norm comes with a lot of baggage, you know? I've seen over my years of working in gaming stores and comic book stores and just nerd culture stores, a woman walking through the doors at all was, at least where I was at the time, it's not as much anymore here, but all across the country. A woman walks into the store and you can just hear a record scratch and like all faces turn. Like, oh my God, estrogen walked into the room. You know, it's almost like, science departments in most colleges, but that's getting better too. Um, and that is amazingly uncomfortable when the eyes are turning on you. And today's episode is pointing that out so that we can spread the message that these things are out there and still real so that people, ourselves included, because with intersectionality, no one is free of this behavior. I myself find myself a little shocked and having to reassess a lot of my preconceived notions when I see, like, now, I learned video games from a good man. I'm not going to say his name because we're on the internet and I don't roll like that. But let's just call him Dave. And he was a triplegic with cerebral palsy. So he only had the use of one arm. And he used to beat me at console games like crazy. And he could also type 70 words a minute. So that helped fix my preconceived notions about the disabled with a lot of these hobbies. But a lot of the times I look at people that aren't what I'm used to coming into places going, I didn't think you would read that kind of thing. Why wouldn't I? Oh yeah, because sometimes I'm being an idiot. And that's what our culture has taught us, and it's up to us to be mindful of that and to, I don't know, possibly practice a little empathy of what it's like to not be the norm, because if you are in geek culture, you're not the norm and you didn't grow up the norm, and we tend to forget that. Now, the first major hurdle of toxicity that I wanted to talk about today was the dismissal of the unfamiliar. This idea that if I don't already know you, you don't belong here. I mean, there are many ways to other, to other someone else. But this idea that at 17, 19, 45, 65, this idea of, well, I haven't seen you around here, so I guess you don't belong around here. It's like, dude, I might have just moved here, But this dismissal of the unfamiliar, the Auslandering, It's you're not part of my gaming group, so I don't even want to know who you are. Really? It's like, didn't we form these gaming groups because we had no one else? Didn't we get into comics and fantasy and sci-fi because we wanted to escape the world that we were in, that we didn't feel really had a place for us at the end of the day? And imagine a world where there is one. We could read stuff by Philip K. Dick and say, oh my God, I would love to self-insert myself into that. We could read, today, I mean, we've got things like Afrofuturism and things like that, but even in fantasy novels. And again, I'm saying this is a big thing because I'm a person of color, so I don't immediately self-insert. Like, we all know Game of Thrones came on a couple of days ago and it was woo, but I don't see myself from Westeros. I'm already othered from that. I look at that from third-party omniscience. But when I look at people that's like, hey, how's it going, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I read the Game of Thrones books. And they look at me like, you would read those? I'm like, they're books. They're words that are bound within covers with a spine, and they're put in some kind of order. So, oh man, thanks guys. I haven't said hi to the chat out there. I really should. Matter of fact, I think I'm going to as soon as yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to say, what's going on, chat? I haven't been talking with you guys, but I've been trying to get through this. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mike, at Nerd Soul. If you guys haven't seen his stuff, seriously, go over to Nerd Soul. That's NERDSOUL. We did a spoiler talk on Avengers Endgame, and somebody actually said, oh my God, it's like walking into a barber shop and hearing people talk about Endgame because it was an all black man panel. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I read prolifically, and people are surprised by that. And the surprising of it isn't the problem, but it's the dismissal of the unfamiliar. That is where the stuff starts getting toxic, because if there's no room in your life for someone who isn't already in there, then your world becomes no bigger than 5 phone numbers. I mean, just think about that. 5 phone numbers. That's it. That's your gaming group. That's your social circle. And a lot of people are like, okay, well, I'm fine with that. And I'm like, were you? Because I'm pretty sure that when you started all this stuff, that's about the same size of the gaming circle or friend circle that you had back then. So are you really okay with it that small? Like, you're cool with closing the door to someone who could potentially bring a lot of good stuff to your life, or someone who you could bring a lot of good things into their life, Now we can talk about the gamers, all right? Those guys that are like, well, we're playing 40K, duh. Oh, he doesn't know what 40K is. Yeah, I'm still a little bit salty about it. And I know it was 1989. So yeah, it's been what, 30 years? That's fine. You know what? I own that. But what I will also say is, all of this stuff that we like, it seems mainstream now, but it started as a niche. And I promise, if you go outside of your immediate circle, like, can you really talk about the Iron Man story Demon in a Bottle from Marvel Comics circa 1978 at the water cooler at your job? If you can, awesome. Let me know if you guys are hiring. But most people can't. We can talk about the movies because everybody's seen the movies, but you can't really talk about your Eldar army, or since I played War Machine, I couldn't talk about my Menite delivery force. I have a lot of friends that don't even watch my channel because, well, I'm not gamer, so I don't really, because what we do here is a niche. It's a really, really tiny niche in a great big world, and we live in a world right now where we're so interconnected. It can seem like our tiny niche is huge. And objectively, I don't know the numbers, but I know subjectively, yeah, I know more gamers and comic fans and all that stuff now, thanks to the internet, that I may never meet in person because they live from my next city over as far away as South Africa, no joke. Okay. Am I going to South Africa? I don't know. Sometimes I have a hard time. Sometimes I have a hard time getting gas enough to go see my mom. So we'll see how that's going. Hey, Ganja, what's up, man? Um, so having that perspective of everybody does this because everybody I know does this can be, well, it's a gateway to toxicity. Because if you think that what you know is the totality, or if you think that your world is the totality of the world, then what happens when you're out of your element? Well, go to an office party, see what happens. Go to a Christmas party, see what happens, And this behavior has a very, very, very huge, very huge, what is the thing? It has a very, very, very huge margin of becoming toxic because, one, let's face it, there was only one captain of the football team, only one prom king, only one voted most popular at school. So my school had 2,000 people. So one out of 2,000 people was the most popular. Maybe 10 out of those 2,000 people were friends with the most popular guy, like part of their clique, and this applies to like the Mean Girl crew and all that stuff. So chances are you weren't that person. I sure as heck knows I wasn't that person. By the way, I got a comment over here. Love that you're here, bro, but this is a PG-13 channel, so just relax on the words that a 10-year-old can't say in front of their parent without getting 5 across the eyes. But I'm glad you're here, and I am noticing and shouting out to you. So yeah, so on that level, the gamers kind of closing the door to this idea of you can't join our group until you have reached an undisclosed arbitrary level of what we believe is acceptable for you to join our group. This one goes out to a lot of the women out there. Okay, there is no such thing as a fake nerd. There really isn't. There is no such thing as a fake nerd girl, except if you're one of the popular kids and you're trying to infiltrate the nerds so that you can play a prank on them. That's it. That's the only way that you end up being a fake nerd, all right? It really comes down to a lot of people are like, well, if you're not into physics and history and all that stuff, you're not a nerd. Not true. If you do what you like and you're happy about it, you're at least a geek. I mean, I know so many people that geek out on fantasy football. Not my bag, but to be a geek is to really throw yourself into something passionately and enjoy it regardless of what people think of you. And nerd has always been something reserved for using your intelligence publicly and unshamed and unabashedly. So, yeah, I'm going to pretend to be as smart as I actually am. That is an impossibility. You cannot pretend to be as smart as you are. So there's no such thing as a fake nerd. There is no such thing as someone who doesn't like comics enough. You know what? When I was in my 20s, a lot of people used to tell me, you don't know much, you're in your 20s, or, you're young, you're this, you're that. And I'm like, I had no power over when my parents had sex. Okay, it's that simple. I can't control how old I am. And a lot of people can't control how much exposure to your niche thing they've not had. In the last episode, I made it very clear. As much as I loved comic books and loved cartoons and loved playing pretend with my friends in the park, there were no role-playing games within 30 miles. The only place that I found out later, and this is for a future episode, that sold comic books was 10 miles away. And I didn't even know they had comic books. And it literally was one rotating stand inside of a bookstore at the University Village at USC. That was it. That was the only place that sold comics within 20 miles of my house. So, excuse me if I don't know the genius of Jack Kirby at 12 years old, because that's not my environment. In the same way that someone from, oh, I don't know, let's say, let's see, Battle Creek, Michigan, didn't understand. Oh, someone from Battle Creek, Michigan, that was born in 2002 doesn't understand the cultural significance to Compton, California that NWA had in 1987. You know, you weren't there, you're not old enough to do it, and that doesn't make you less than. And the toxicity comes in when the fans make people less than for things they had no control over. You see what I mean? Let's see. Let's see what the chat's saying over here. Ah, the stoner community is full of red-eyed nerds. I can see that. I can really see that. Um, and it looks like Nerd Soul came back. This is great. So yeah, now I'm gonna talk about the toxicity of the store guy, okay? Because the guy behind the counter. Now, I hear people all the time, but Feller, you didn't have enough money to be a customer. And okay, all right. You know what? I didn't have any money to buy things. But have you ever been kicked out of, say, a bookstore for asking questions about the product? You know, I mean that's the big thing. You know, a lot of people are like, "Well, if you're not going to buy something in the first 14 seconds, Starbucks, police, people sitting at the table. Come on now. Come on. All right. Um if you walk into somewhere that's a niche area, okay? A very very niche area like an RPG store. You know, if there are people there, and I'm dead serious. If there are people there that are telling you, you know, well, you don't have the right, you know, to ask questions about the products that they are selling, um, because, you know, um, you can't ask questions about what they're selling. You either have to already know what you're looking for when you walk into that store, and you can't ask questions. That's like going to a damn restaurant and not being allowed a menu. Okay, that just does not fly. Okay, that's bad business across the board. Okay, if the people that are paying you, I'm dead serious, if the people that are paying you can't answer questions, then you shouldn't be giving them your money, you know. And you know, I mean, it's one of those things. Now, all right, yeah, Garrett is talking about that, you know, that now I make a joke about the toxicity of a lot of gaming stores and stuff like that. Being a person of color, if you guys haven't seen me in real life, I am 6 feet 4 inches tall. Okay, I'm tall, I'm lanky, I like wearing long drapey cape things, and I'm a biker, which means if I'm out in public, I'm either wearing a long drapey cape thing because it's cold outside, or I'm wearing a motorcycle jacket and boots that go up to my knees because safety. Um, and I go to places like this in these niche markets, and I get the best customer service a person can never ask for. And by that I mean I'm followed around every single aisle. Hey, can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? Are you looking for anything in particular? Are you looking for something? Can I help you? Can I help you? Can I help you? Because, you know, I don't like to browse. And that gets grating. That really gets grating. And you know, um so these are a lot of the things that cause the toxicity in our environment. And when you guys see it, I hate to sound like a 1980s, the more you know, public service announcement. But if you see something, say something. You know, stand up for the person that's being marginalized or othered in the same way that not only did you want someone to stand up for you, but the way that somebody probably did. You know, even if you didn't know, there was somebody that said, hey, this person's cool. Hey, John's cool. Let him in. Or I got a friend named John. You would probably meet him. But as long as we keep these gates open to a certain kind of person that's only put in as much work as we have, our games are going to get stale. Our lives are going to get boring. Now, again, I'm all about solutions. I'm not just about, oh my God, I'm just going to cry. I'm just complaining. I don't like all this stuff. There's nothing we can do. All is lost. All is lost. Yeah, no, I'm not that guy. All right. Over at backinthedeck.com, yeah, our channel, I have been traveling the country to find stores that don't do that. The stores that say, hey, you're new, come on in. And the stores that specifically say, see people that are toxic and are like, dude, don't do that. If for no other reason, dude, don't do that. You're costing me money, says the owner. But most of the time it's, dude, don't be a jerk. You better behave like a human being and, or get out, And we've got great stores like the Dice House in Fullerton. Mr. Twanley is amazing. Over on the YouTube channel, if you scrolled all the way down to the bottom of videos or check out the Coffee and Conversation playlist, he was one of our first interviews. We've actually got the Guild House in Bellflower, California. Charles is an amazing dude. Brookhurst Hobbies is not bad. It ain't great. It ain't the best out there, because the best I've yet to find. I'm trying to travel the world looking at all these places. But I will say it is in the top 2 in Orange County, California. Okay, that says a lot. Majestic Collectibles in Orange. This is specifically if you're a HeroClix person, because that's pretty much all they sell. And of course, we've got Game Time in Los Angeles, the Comic Bug / Game Hub in Manhattan Beach, and they actually have a woman's writer and a woman's writing group and a woman artist group. They're called the Ladybugs, that meet up there and write comics and go through illustrations. And it's a great store. It's in Manhattan Beach, and we've been working with those guys for a few years. And if you're in like the Nevada area, check out Maximum Comics in Henderson, Nevada, and Vegas. And Austin is just chock full of them. Dragon's Lair, Mothership, Outlaw Moon, Mage's Sanctum is one of my favorites. And these are all comic stores and game stores that are run by old dudes or young dudes, but more to the point, people that remember what it's like to be new, and that is how we crack. That is really how we crack this toxicity. As a lot of you guys that follow the channel know, over the past year, I've gotten more into Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition than I have into Pathfinder, and I've pretty much stopped playing War Machine from Privateer Press. Not that there's anything wrong with any of these games, but primarily because the environments in the other games became so toxic, and I saw that Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, thanks to Mark Mercer and the guys at Critical Role and some of the guys at Roll 20, they have introduced an entirely new generation to gaming, and that generation is so awesome. So I'm giving a shout out to gaming millennials and gaming Z-lennials, or whatever it is they're called, because they keep the door open for everybody. There's more intersectionality that's public today because of the internet than there ever has been. So if you're feeling, I end every video in the same way, every single video that I do on the Instagram, on any of the live streams that we do on Twitch and these videos, but I end them all in the same way. And you'll be hearing that a little bit later. And why are you going to hear it later? Because I want to make sure that there are the folks. Wow, I did not even realize that my music has kind of been going for this entire broadcast. I think I like it. Oh no, it hasn't been. My bad. But yeah. But I am gonna start to wrap this up because I didn't mean to be here for an entire half hour, or close to an hour now. This is gonna be a super long video. But before I do, I want to check out the chat and just answer any questions. Yeah, they get defensive instead of excited to tell you about their passion product, right? That's been a thing. And I know I had a friend that went through this with a lot of Dungeons and Dragons 3.5 players that had been playing for all of their adolescence, and they were in their early 30s, and they had a way that they liked to play the game. And we'll talk about a little bit of that stuff in future episodes about how the way you learn to play a game can fool you into thinking that that is the way the game is played. We covered a little bit of that on Game Gallery this Sunday. You can just head on over to well, actually, while I'm doing that, I'm just gonna pull up the page so you guys get to see. Doop doop doo 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 doo. Yeah, I'm just gonna pull that up real quick because I can. Yeah, that's the bag channel. Oh, wrong one. Videos. There we go. Yeah, you guys can just head over to twitch.tv/bid_p, which is the Twitch channel, and just check out not DarkCide. There we go. Yeah, that one. Yeah, and check out the live broadcast here where I'm wearing a blue turtleneck. And that's from Sunday. And that's a game gallery with the Duggernaut, Doug Thoyne. And yeah, just head on down. We talk about that stuff every Sunday because I have a schedule that I put out. What else do we have here in the chat? Yep. Yep. And yeah, they do act like, what do you think you're doing here? Thanks, Garrett. But with that, I am gonna say thank you guys for showing up. That is a serious, this is I love interacting with the deckers out there. Of course, this is the monetized part, or not the monetized, but this is the part where I start begging for subscribers and notifications and interactions and thumbs up and all that stuff. Since you guys are here on the YouTube channel, so just subscribe. This show is going to be every Tuesday. Okay, every Tuesday, hopefully around 6. It all depends on if I get called in, and but because if I get called into my day job, then sometimes I'm not home until 5:30, or not 5:30, but 6:30. It all depends on traffic. But thank you guys for showing up, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to keep talking. In the comments, have conversations, keep it civil, because if I see people being mean for the sake of being mean, I will axe you and block you, because I make it very clear that Back in the Deck Productions is a place for gamers to be themselves and not just to be jerks. But with that, I'm gonna say, if you guys have any questions about how about anything involving games and comics and how-tos and all that jazz, then feel free to pull up a keyboard and send me an email over at backinthedeck@gmail.com. That's BACKINTHEDECK@gmail.com. You can also, hey, look, you're watching us on YouTube right now. That is so awesome. So like, subscribe, share, bring your friends. There is no age limit here. That's why we keep the things at PG-13. So if you've got like a 10-year-old nephew that wants to get into this and doesn't know how, just send them on over, have them subscribe to the Twitch channel and here and all that stuff. Feel free to follow us on Twitter. That's at Back in the Deck. That's the @ symbol, which I will learn the name of, BACKINTHEDECK. And of course, join the group Deckers on the Book if you guys tend to hang out at that wretched hive of scum and villainy that we know as Facebook. We have so many years of back catalogs of our podcast, because we podcast 3 to 4 days a week. And we do that over on the Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/BID_P. And we also have a Patreon. Okay. And yeah, but I'll tell you guys about that in a moment. But head on over to SoundCloud and look up our archive, so that if you can't watch the show, or if you're like me and you do a lot of chores, or you spend a long time in the shower, or you spend forever and a day in traffic, you can listen to our MP3s over at soundcloud.com/BID_P. And you know what? You can even download them and keep them for yourself forever. And you'll be able to keep doing that as long as I can keep affording to pay for the SoundCloud account. And of course, follow us over on Instagram. Now, if you guys really like what we do and you want to throw us some support, I won't lie and say, nah, don't do all that shit. No, I would really appreciate it if you guys were to do that. If you guys were just to head on over to hang on, I'm just doing the patreon.com. Let me just nope. There we go. I normally have all this queued up. Yeah, let me just, there we go. Yeah, if you head on over to patreon.com/BID_P and join our Patreon page. You know, we have tiers starting at $1 a month. And at $1 a month, you get access to our entire video archive. I have been uploading this thing for months, and I'm still working on more. And of course, you get all of our shows. Our Monday, or our Thursday show being Table Talk. Our Friday show being Coffee and Conversation, where I go to different places and get interviews with store owners and comic writers and book publishers. Bust a Recap, where we have our show that is a spoiler discussion on the stuff we're watching on TV right now. Currently, we are in the season 2 of Cloak and Dagger and season 1 of the Doom Patrol, and that's Monday nights. And of course, our weekly one-shot, where we actually do a one-shot campaign live on air with new players of Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'm thinking about going Call of Cthulhu for 2020, but we'll see what goes on with that. But feel free to go through there and check out all of those things. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me. And remember, if anybody tells you that you can't like what you like because of the circumstances of your birth, be it race, religion, creed, gender identity, sexual orientation, disability, or your budget, you just tell them that we said to take those cards and put them back in the deck. This is Solar Gray, the Cinematic Sorcerer, saying thank you guys for tuning in to How We Roll.